mother and her 9-year-old daughter vanished without a trace during a ski trip at Pinecrest Summit. For 7 years, the mountain kept its silence until a hiker stumbled upon a blood-stained child's ski beneath the melting snow. What followed unraveled a haunting web of lies, grooming, and betrayal no one saw coming. This is the chilling true story of Mira and Ellie Hossner. The sun was just beginning to rise over the frost-covered rooftops of Pinecrest Village, casting a pale gold light across the narrow streets. Inside a modest 2-story home at the edge of town, Gabriel Hossner sat hunched on his couch, a thick wrap of ice packs strapped to his swollen knee. The injury had been stupid. A misplaced step while shoveling snow in his driveway 3 days earlier had sent him tumbling. The doctors said it was a minor fracture of the knee cartilage, but it meant that he'd be off his feet for weeks. The timing couldn't have been worse. His wife Mira and their daughter Ellie had been looking forward to the annual family ski trip to Pinecrest Summit Resort for months. The tradition had begun when Ellie was just a toddler bundled in a snowsuit, too small to walk on her own skis. Now, at 9, she was eager to tackle more advanced slopes, her confidence growing with each season. Gabriel winced as he adjusted his leg on the ottoman. Across the room, a half-packed duffel bag sat abandoned. He had intended to go with them until the fall. Now he would be stuck here, pacing the house and worrying. Mira entered the room, zipping up her sleek white ski jacket, her cheeks flushed with anticipation. Ellie trailed behind her, face beaming beneath a fuzzy purple hat. "Are you sure you'll be okay here alone?" Mira asked, concern flickering in her eyes. Gabriel forced a smile. "I'll be fine. The doctor says I need to rest. You two go and enjoy it. You've been looking forward to this." He reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind Ellie's ear. "And you, young lady, show them how it's done on those slopes." Ellie giggled. "I will. I'm going to try the new Ravens Ridge Trail this time." Mira glanced at her watch. "We should go if we want to beat the traffic. We'll text you when we get there." Gabriel leaned forward, pulling both of them into a tight hug. "Have fun, my loves. I'll be here cheering you on from the couch." He watched from the frosted window as Mira's SUV pulled away, Ellie waving enthusiastically from the back seat. As their taillights disappeared into the snowy haze, a strange sense of unease settled over him. He brushed it off. He was being overprotective. The resort was safe. They had been there countless times. Gabriel tried to distract himself with books and television, but his gaze kept drifting to the empty coat hooks by the door. He found himself checking his phone repeatedly, anxious for updates. By late afternoon, a message finally came through, a photo of Mira and Ellie bundled in their ski gear, grinning at the camera with the snow-covered summit behind them. Beneath it, Mira had written, "Made it safe. Ellie's loving the snow. Trying Ravens Ridge tomorrow. Love you." Gabriel smiled despite the ache in his knee. He sent back heart emojis and a simple reply. "Have fun, my loves. Be safe." The next morning began quietly. Gabriel brewed coffee and sat by the window, watching fat flakes of snow drift lazily to the ground. The house felt unnervingly still. He picked up his phone, expecting a cheerful good morning text. Nothing. He shrugged it off. Maybe they were already on the slopes. Cell service on the mountain was notoriously spotty. By noon, the silence became harder to ignore. He dialed Mira's phone, straight to voicemail. Frowning, he tried Ellie's number, also voicemail. His unease began to sharpen into a dull blade of fear. "They're probably on the back slopes," he told himself aloud. "No service there." But the hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last. At 3:30 p.m., unable to stand it any longer, he called the front desk at Pinecrest Summit Resort. A polite voice answered. "Pinecrest Summit, this is Angela." Gabriel's voice was tight. "This is Gabriel Hossner. My wife and daughter are staying there, Mira and Ellie Hossner. Could you check their room, please? I haven't heard from them since yesterday." There was a pause. "Of course, sir. Give me a moment." Gabriel stared at the clock as the seconds ticked by. 5 minutes later, the line clicked back on. Angela's voice had changed, now tinged with concern. "Mr. Hossner, their room is empty. Their belongings are here, but we haven't seen them since yesterday evening." The words struck like a blow. Gabriel gripped the phone so hard his knuckles whitened. "Are you sure? Could they be on the slopes?" "We've checked the day passes, sir. Their ski lift scans show they went up early this morning, but there are no further scans after that." Panic coiled in Gabriel's chest. "Call ski patrol. Search the slopes. I'm coming up there." "Of course, sir. We'll alert the authorities immediately." Gabriel barely registered the pain in his knee as he scrambled to pull on clothes and grab his keys. The drive to the resort, normally a scenic hour-long journey, felt like an eternity. His mind spun with possibilities. An accident, a lost signal, perhaps they were stranded somewhere, anything but the growing dread that whispered of something worse. As he reached the entrance to Pinecrest Summit, flashing emergency lights greeted him. Ski patrol, resort security, and local police were already assembling. Gabriel limped into the lobby, breathless. "Where are they?" he demanded. Angela hurried over. "Mr. Hossner, we're organizing a search now. Please, come with us." The search extended into the fading daylight. Snowmobiles combed the trails, volunteers scoured the woods. But as darkness fell, there was no sign of Mira or Ellie, only a widening void where hope had been. Standing alone in the lobby, Gabriel stared at his phone screen, rereading Mira's last message. "Trying Ravens Ridge tomorrow. Love you." His heart clenched. He whispered into the empty air, "Come home, please." The sharp wind outside Pinecrest Summit howled through the mountain passes as Gabriel limped into the resort lobby, heart pounding, mind clouded with dread. The flashes of red and blue from emergency vehicles stained the snow with restless color. Angela, the front desk manager, met him near the entrance, her expression a fragile mask of professionalism barely hiding her worry. "Mr. Hossner, please come with me," she urged. Without a word, he followed her through the bustling lobby and up to the third floor. The hall was eerily quiet, save for the distant murmur of radios from the search teams. Angela stopped at room 312, the family's usual suite. Her hand trembled slightly as she slid the key card through the lock. The door clicked open. Gabriel stepped inside. The room was a small shrine to the life that had been there less than a day ago. Mira's coat hung neatly on the chair nequin. Ellie's scarf draped over the back of a chair. A pair of ski gloves, one larger, one smaller, rested on the windowsill, abandoned as if left in a hurry. On the nightstand by the bed, Mira's phone lay face up, screen dark. Gabriel snatched it up. The battery was nearly full. No missed calls, no unread texts beyond his unanswered messages from that morning. His chest tightened. "Where's Ellie's phone?" he asked, voice strained. Gabriel glanced uneasily around the room. "We haven't found it. We searched everywhere." Gabriel's gaze darted to Ellie's small backpack lying open by the dresser. Her favorite book peeked out, along with a stuffed bunny she rarely traveled without. But no phone. "Check again," he demanded. "Every drawer, every corner." Angela nodded, summoning 2 housekeeping staff, who methodically combed through the room under Gabriel's watchful eyes. Nothing. The phone was gone. Gabriel paced, mind racing. Why would Mira leave her phone behind? Why was Ellie's phone missing? The sense of normalcy in the room clashed violently with the gnawing alarm in his gut. Downstairs, the resort's IT technician arrived, summoned by the growing urgency. "Smart Hossner, I'm Ethan," the young man introduced himself. "We've started pulling data from the ski pass system. It logs every time a skier scans in at a lift." Gabriel followed Ethan to the control room, a cramped space lined with monitors and humming servers. A screen displayed time-stamped records from the resort's RFID ski pass readers. Ethan typed quickly, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Here," he pointed, "your wife and daughter's passes were scanned at Lift 4 Ravens Ridge Express this morning at 8:42 a.m. Hagen leaned in, studying the entries. "After that?" "No further scans," Ethan said quietly. "They didn't scan back in at the base. They didn't scan at any of the mid-mountain lifts either." "What about GPS? Mira's skis had a tracker she always insisted after that near whiteout 2 years ago." Ethan nodded. "I'm pulling that data now." More keystrokes. Another screen lit up, this one showing a map of the mountain with dotted lines representing ski paths. A red line traced Mira's descent from the summit on previous days. Today's path showed an abrupt start, Lee 4, as indicated, then a short descent along Ravens Ridge Trail. The line ended at 9:08 a.m. Ethan clicked on the last data point. "This is where the signal stopped. No data after this. The location blinked ominously on the map, off to the side of the main trail, near an area marked with crosshatch warnings, restricted to due to avalanche risk. Gabriel's fists clenched. How accurate is that location? Within about 20 feet, Ethan replied. It could have been a malfunction, but combined with no further lift scans, it's concerning. Gabriel swayed, bracing himself against the console. He could almost hear Mira's voice from the night before, cheerful, unknowing. We're going to try the new trail tomorrow. He straightened, jaw set. Has Ski Patrol searched that area? Ethan hesitated. Not yet. It's not part of the open terrain today, but I'll notify them immediately. As Ethan radioed the search command center, Gabriel turned away, gaze drawn back to the digital map where the red line ended so abruptly. A line that should have continued down to safety, to another lift, to the warm embrace of the lodge. Instead, it stopped, frozen in time. Moments later, Angela entered the room, breathless. Mr. Hossner, Ski Patrol is mobilizing. They're bringing in avalanche dogs and expanding the search grid. Gabriel grabbed his coat. I'm going with them. Angela hesitated. Sir, your knee. I don't care. His voice broke no argument. In the cold pre-dawn hours of the following day, Gabriel stood at the staging area near Lift 4, the first faint light of morning casting long shadows across the snow. The mountain loomed above, silent and indifferent. Search teams gathered, equipped with beacons, probes, and radios. Gabriel scanned their faces, desperate any sign of hope. Victor Hale approached, dressed in instructor gear. Gabe, he greeted quietly, gripping his friend's shoulder. I heard. I'm so sorry. I'll help however I can. Gabriel nodded tightly, words failing him. The teams set off in staggered waves, ascending into the wilderness where technology had gone dark. Gabriel watched them disappear into the trees, the memory of that red line on the map seared into his mind. Beside him, Victor spoke again, voice low. Raven's Ridge is treacherous this time of year. If they veered even slightly off course— He trailed off, but the unspoken possibility hung between them. Gabriel's grip tightened on the search map in his hand. He refused to believe it. Not yet. Not until every inch of that cursed ridge was searched. The wind rose again, scattering ice crystals like stardust across the frozen ground. In the distance, the faint crackle of a radio echoed through the stillness. The search had begun, but deep down, Gabriel knew this was only the beginning of a far more harrowing ordeal. The third day of the search dawned with a brittle, metallic sky and a biting wind that scoured the mountain's surface. Gabriel stood at the base camp near the lift terminal, huddled in a borrowed Ski Patrol jacket, his injured knee braced beneath layers of fabric. Sleep had eluded him. Each night brought only fragments of restless dozing and haunting images of Mira and Ellie, lost amid the snow. The radio on the table beside him crackled with static, punctuated by clipped voices from the search teams combing the slopes and tree lines. Maps were spread across every flat surface, annotated with marker lines showing where patrols had already searched, where they would go next. A sickening emptiness persisted. Each hour without news pressed heavier upon Gabriel's chest. Victor Hale remained close by, coordinating alongside the patrol team. Despite Gabriel's gratitude for his friend's presence, a gnawing edge of distrust had begun to stir deep within him. Illogical, perhaps, but impossible to ignore. At mid-morning, the search expanded beyond the main trails. Patrol Captain Sandra Mays approached Gabriel, clipboard in hand. We're widening the grid. Volunteers from the community are starting to arrive. If you're comfortable, we'll brief them at the lodge. Gabriel agreed at once. The more eyes on the mountain, the better. Within an hour, over 24 townfolk and visitors had gathered in the lodge's conference room. Some were seasoned hikers and skiers, others were simply concerned locals wanting to help. Gabriel scanned the crowd, his heart swelling with a grim sort of hope. If Mira and Ellie were still out there, someone might find a clue. Sandra conducted the briefing with practiced efficiency, dividing the volunteers into small groups, each assigned specific sectors to sweep. Gabriel's eyes caught on a man near the back, a tall, middle-aged tourist in a green parka, snow still clinging to his boot. The man raised his hand hesitantly. I think I might have seen them, he said. The room hushed. Gabriel's pulse quickened. Sandra gestured for him to continue. My name's Douglas Kent. My wife and I were skiing on Ridgeview Trail 2 mornings ago. Around 9:30, we took a break near the old Firewatch turnoff. He glanced down, gathering his thoughts. That's when I noticed a woman and a young girl skiing across the open slope below us. I remember because they weren't on any marked trail. They were heading west, toward the backcountry boundary near Raven's Ridge. Murmurs rippled through the group. Gabriel forced himself to speak calmly. "Are you certain it was them?" Douglas nodded slowly. "I can't be sure, but the woman had dark hair pulled back, wearing a white jacket. They were moving together, but they were moving together seemed odd." Gabriel's throat tightened. Mira's white jacket, Ellie's pink helmet. The direction west, away from the open trails, toward restricted terrain. Sandra leaned in. "Did you see anyone else with them?" "No, just the two of them." Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment, struggling to steady his breathing. Mira had said they were going to try the new trail, but why would they have headed toward Raven's Ridge, a dangerous area closed for the season due to unstable snow? The possibilities swirled in his mind. An accidental wrong turn? A panicked escape from something unseen? Sandra swiftly assigned a new team to focus on the reported sighting zone. Gabriel insisted on going with them. The team ascended by snowmobile and then on foot, moving in a slow, methodical sweep across the windswept expanse below Ridgeview Trail. Trees grew sparse here, the slope opened wide before narrowing into chutes flanked by jagged rock outcroppings. The sky remained cold and gray, sun struggling behind a veil of cloud. Hours passed in an exhausting crawl, the snow thick and uneven underfoot. Then, just past a narrow ravine, one of the searchers called out, "Over here!" Gabriel stumbled forward, heart racing. The man knelt beside a drift of packed snow, partially concealing a narrow gap between boulders. Half buried in the ice was a small red object, a child's glove. Breath caught in Gabriel's throat as he knelt beside it, fingers trembling. The glove was unmistakable, bright red with a tiny silver star stitched on the wrist. Ellie's. Mira had sewn that star herself after Ellie begged for something special to tell her gloves apart. Sandra examined the scene, face grim. No tracks nearby. This could have been here since the snowfall yesterday. Gently, she retrieved the glove, sealing it in an evidence bag. Gabriel stared at the empty space where it had lain, trying to imagine how it had come to rest here, more than a kilometer from the marked boundary of Raven's Ridge. The glove's presence confirmed the worst of his fears. Mira and Ellie had indeed ventured beyond the planned route. Why or how they had ended up here remained a dark enigma. Word of the discovery spread quickly. Volunteers redoubled their efforts, combing the adjacent slopes and ravines with renewed urgency. Despite the bitter cold seeping into his bones, Gabriel pressed on, driven by the image of Ellie's small hand once warming that very glove. Dusk crept over the mountain, turning the snow to a shadowed expanse of blue and gray. Gabriel stood at the edge of the search zone, eyes scanning the darkening terrain. Nearby, Victor approached quietly. "We'll pick up again at first light," he said, voice low. Gabriel nodded, though a knot of tension remained coiled in his gut. Victor's words, his presence, once reassuring, now felt laden with an unspoken weight. As night fell, the searchers retreated to the base camp, weary but determined. Gabriel lingered, gazing up at the cold, indifferent slopes. Somewhere out there, beyond reach and reason, the threads of the truth awaited discovery, and he knew that until they were found, he would not rest. Snow returned to Pinecrest Summit with a vengeance the following winter, blanketing the mountain in deep, unbroken drifts. The storm cycle that had begun in early November seemed unwilling to relent, each new system layering more powder atop the frozen slopes. The previous season had ended in heartbreak and frustration. Despite weeks of exhaustive searching, Mira and Ellie remained missing. The only tangible clue, a single red glove, had been catalogued, bagged, and returned to Gabriel in a small evidence envelope he kept locked away in a drawer he could not bear to open. The case remained open, but as the months wore on, the search dwindled. The urgency that had once galvanized the town began to fade beneath the weight of time and the harshness of the winter. By December of the new season, only a core group of volunteers remained committed to scouring the remote zones during their off hours. Among them was Victor Hale. Gabriel watched with weary gratitude as Victor volunteered again and again to assist in weekend patrols, always among the first to arrive at the morning briefings. His friend had been a constant source of support throughout the past year, checking in on Gabriel when most others seemed unable to find words. Yet a subtle shift had begun to take root in Gabriel's perception. It started with small observations: Victor's tendency to steer conversations away from Raven's Ridge, his visible discomfort whenever that cursed sector was mentioned during planning sessions. More than once, Gabriel had seen Victor volunteer for search routes that deliberately skirted the boundary of the ridge, citing logistical reasons or avalanche concerns. At first, Gabriel chalked it up to understandable caution. No one wanted to risk triggering a slide in the unstable snowfields. But the pattern persisted, growing harder to ignore. One bitter Saturday morning in late January, Gabriel joined the volunteer team gathered in the equipment room adjacent to the main lodge. Maps were spread across the table, with search sectors marked in bright ink. Captain Sandra Mays led the briefing, her tone brisk. "We'll be focusing on the northern ridgelines today. Conditions are stable enough for limited access. We'll need coverage near Raven's Ridge perimeter." Gabriel's gaze flicked toward Victor. As expected, Victor quickly raised his hand, volunteering for a sector well east of the boundary zone. Gabriel's heart tightened. He wanted to believe the best of his friend, yet doubts continued to creep in, unbidden and corrosive. That afternoon, while the teams were out on the mountain, a conversation in the maintenance bay caught Gabriel's ear. He had stopped by to warm his hands near the workstove's industrial heater when he overheard two young technicians speaking in hushed tones. "Did you see what Hale had in his locker?" one whispered. The other nodded. "Yeah, weird, right? That heavy-duty snow jacket and that old GoPro lens setup. Looked like custom work." Gabriel's pulse quickened. He stepped closer, masking his intent with a casual air. "What was that about Victor's locker?" The technicians stiffened, eyes widening when they recognized him. One, a wiry man named Nate, stammered, "Oh, nothing, Mr. Hossner. Just Victor keeps some gear in his locker. A little odd, that's all." Gabriel's voice remained calm, but edged with steel. "What kind of gear?" Nate glanced at his coworker, then lowered his voice. "There's a white-out rated snow jacket. Looked brand new. Never seen him wear it. And a GoPro lens, but not like the regular ones we mount on helmets. This one looked modified. Wider field, odd casing." A chill prickled down Gabriel's spine. "You're sure about this?" Nate nodded slowly. "Saw it when I was doing an inventory run. It caught my eye because we've never issued that kind of gear here." Gabriel forced a thin smile. "Thank you. I appreciate your discretion." He left the workshop with his heart hammering, mind awash with suspicion. Why would Victor possess specialized cold-weather gear he never used, and a modified camera setup? The implications twisted in Gabriel's gut. He tried to dismiss them. Victor had been a loyal friend, had stood by him through the worst year of his life, but the nagging doubt refused to dissipate. That evening, Gabriel sat alone in the dim light of his living room, knee aching beneath its brace. The worn folder of search reports lay open on the coffee table, pages splayed beneath trembling fingers. The maps of the ridge, the notes on patrol routes, the thin trail of circumstantial observations regarding Victor, all converged into a grim tapestry of uncertainty. Across the room, the drawer containing Ellie's red glove seemed to beckon like a silent accusation. Gabriel closed his eyes, the weight of loss pressing down upon him. He knew he could no longer ignore the questions that plagued him, yet he also knew that confronting them would require caution and resolve. Outside, snow continued to fall in thick, silent veils, cloaking the mountain once more in secrecy. The search would resume in the morning, and with it the fragile hope that somewhere beneath the frozen expanse the truth awaited discovery. By the time the third anniversary of Mira and Ellie's disappearance approached, the sharpness of Gabriel's grief had dulled into a deep, constant ache, a wound that refused to close. The official search had long since been suspended, but a few dedicated volunteers still combed the remote regions of the mountain each season. Gabriel himself continued to participate whenever his need permitted, driven not by hope so much as a gnawing need for answers. Victor remained a visible presence at the resort, still teaching advanced ski classes and leading safety briefings. His friendship with Gabriel had grown strained, though neither man openly acknowledged it. Conversations had become stilted, punctuated by awkward silences. Gabriel found himself observing Victor more than engaging with him, parsing each gesture, each glance for some hidden truth. The unease that had begun a year earlier refused to abate. The resort itself had settled into its familiar rhythms, bustling with holiday tourists and returning regulars. Yet beneath the surface, the shadow of the unresolved tragedy lingered. Guests still whispered about the missing mother and daughter, their photographs faded but not forgotten on the bulletin board near the lodge entrance. In late February of that year, a new snowfall brought the first signs of change. A team of snow scientists from the State University arrived to conduct an annual assessment of avalanche risk in the backcountry zones. Their work required deep core sampling and terrain mapping, extending even into the lower slopes of Ravens Ridge, a zone that had remained largely untouched since the first chaotic weeks of the search. Gabriel learned of their presence from Sandra Mays, who continued to oversee mountain safety operations. She invited him to observe their work, sensing his enduring connection to the case. On a bitterly cold morning, Gabriel joined the scientists at their temporary camp near the base of the ridge. The air was sharp with frost, sunlight glinting off wind-sculpted drifts. The lead researcher, a wiry woman named Dr. Alice Fenwick, greeted him warmly. "We'll be working along the lower ravines today," she explained. "A lot of unstable pockets this season, perfect for data collection." Gabriel nodded, grateful for any excuse to be near the ridge again. He accompanied one of the survey teams as they ascended into a narrow chute marked by fractured ice and buried debris. The going was slow and treacherous, each step sinking into deep powder. Around midday, one of the grad students shouted from a cluster of snow-laden boulders near a frozen streambed. The team converged quickly. Half buried in the compacted snow was a black object, scuffed and cracked. As the students carefully unearthed it, Gabriel's breath caught in his throat. It was a GoPro camera, its casing split along one edge, the lens partially shattered. The device had clearly been exposed to the elements for some time. Dr. Fenwick examined it closely. "No obvious ID markings," she mused. "No memory card either." Gabriel's heart pounded. "May I?" She handed it to him with a nod. His gloved fingers traced the battered housing. Though weathered and broken, it was unmistakably the same model Victor had once kept in his locker, modified with an expanded lens casing. Gabriel's mind raced. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked. The grad student pointed to the rocks. "Wedged under there, about a foot down. Could have been exposed by the recent melt layer." Gabriel knelt by the spot, eyes scanning the surrounding terrain. The location matched the lower runout zone below the ridge, a dangerous, avalanche-prone sector rarely explored in detail. The implications sent a cold surge through his veins. The team logged the discovery and tagged the camera for further analysis. Gabriel remained behind as they moved on, staring at the empty space where it had lain. Questions swirled through his mind. Who had carried that camera here? When? Why? And what had it recorded before being left to freeze beneath the snow? That evening, back at the lodge, Gabriel retrieved a stack of old photo albums from his storage closet. Among them was a collection of staff event photos taken during a winter retreat 5 years earlier. He thumbed through the pages that had long haunted the edges of his memory. Near the back of the album he found it, a candid shot of Victor, standing with a group of instructors near the summit hut. His face was turned slightly away, but his attire was clear, a heavy-duty snow jacket, pure white with a distinctive black trim along the sleeves and hood. Gabriel stared at the image, heart racing. The jacket in the photo matched the one glimpsed in Victor's locker 2 years ago and closely resembled the faint traces of fabric still clinging to the damaged GoPro. He scanned the rest of the album, finding 2 more photos from the same day. Here in each, Victor appeared in the background, wearing the same distinctive jacket. A chill seeped into Gabriel's bones, deeper than the mountain cold. He closed the album with trembling hands, the pieces beginning to align in a pattern too disturbing to ignore. Across the room, his laptop sat open on the dining table, still logged into the resort's staff directory. With methodical precision, Gabriel began cross-referencing staff activity logs from the week of Mira and Ellie's disappearance, searching for any anomalies that might explain the camera's presence and Victor's increasingly suspicious behavior. Outside, the wind rose once more, rattling the lodge's window panes with restless fingers. Somewhere beneath the frozen weight of the ridge, the truth remained buried. But now, for the first time in 3 long years, a sliver of light had pierced the darkness. 5 winters had now come and gone since the morning Mira and Ellie vanished into the whiteness of the ridge, and yet for Gabriel the world remained locked in that frozen moment, as though time itself had become trapped beneath the snow. The battered GoPro had reopened wounds he had fought to cauterize. Since its discovery, he had immersed himself in every available scrap of data and memory from that day. But there were limits to what he could access on his own. Much of the resort's digital archives were controlled by its IT systems, overseen for years by a rotating team of technicians. One such technician, Mark Brewer, had left Pinecrest Summit 2 winters prior, moving to a smaller resort downstate. And Gabriel, driven by equal parts desperation and grim determinations, reached out to him in early February, framing the contact as a simple inquiry about missing video archive. They met at a dimly lit diner in Silver Pine Village, where Mark arrived bundled in an old parka, face pale with curiosity and apprehension. After brief pleasantries, Gabriel leaned forward. "Mark, I need to know about the video archives from Lift 4, the morning my family disappeared." Mark shifted uneasily. "That was a long time ago, Mr. Hossner. Most of the footage cycles out every season." Gabriel's gaze hardened. "I know. But I also know that staff had access to manual backups. Tell me, did anyone retrieve footage from that day?" Mark hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug. Finally, he exhaled. "I probably shouldn't say this, but yes. A few days after the incident, Victor came to the control room. He asked me to help him pull the video files from Lift 4's cameras, claimed it was for the search effort to help Patrol review skier patterns. He even had a blank drive ready." Gabriel's heart thubbed out. "And did anyone else review that footage?" Mark shook his head. "Not that I know of. He took the drive with him. After that, no one mentioned it again." Gabriel sat back, breath shallow. Victor had copied the very footage that might have held critical clues, then vanished it from any official record. The implications chilled him to the core. He left the diner with grim resolve. If Victor had taken the footage, what else had he concealed? Days later, an unsettling new lead emerged. One evening, while scrolling aimlessly through an online forum dedicated to vintage ski gear, a habit born from equal parts grief and hope, Gabriel's eye caught on a listing from a private seller in a neighboring town. The post displayed a pair of children's ski boots, pink with faded white accents, size small. The accompanying description was terse: lightly used, great condition, stored indoors. But it was the photo that stopped Gabriel cold. The boots were unmistakable, Ellie's. Mira had bought them 2 weeks before the trip, and Gabriel had helped Ellie write her name in small block letters on the inside cuff. He enlarged the image, faint but visible, "Believes Howitt." Gabriel contacted the seller immediately, posing as an interested buyer. The response came swiftly, polite and impersonal. The seller agreed to meet in town the following afternoon. Gabriel, his pulse a hammer in his chest, notified Sandra Mays and requested discreet police assistance. The next day, accompanied by a plainclothes officer, Gabriel met the seller, a thin man in his 40s who explained nervously that he was liquidating items from an old storage unit. Pressed further, he revealed that the boots had come from a lot acquired at an auction for abandoned property. The address of the storage unit sent a fresh surge of dread through Gabriel's veins. It belonged to a facility on the outskirts of town, one known to rent long-term spaces to seasonal workers and instructors. Among the recorded lessees was Victor Hale. Police secured a warrant within hours. Gabriel watched from a distance as officers entered the unit, emerging later with a small assortment of winter gear, several electronics, and a battered duffel bag. The boots, confirmed to be Ellie's, were taken into evidence. That night, Gabriel sat alone in his study, the image of the boots burned into his mind. The pattern was becoming impossible to deny. Victor had accessed the ski lift footage. Victor's gear, modified camera, unfamiliar jacket had been linked to the GoPro's recovery zone. And now Ellie's boots had surfaced from a space he controlled. Outside, the wind keened against the window panes, echoing the restless turmoil within Gabriel's heart. The mountain had begun to speak its secrets, but their full meaning remained shrouded in the gathering dark. By the 7th winter, Gabriel had resigned himself to a grim rhythm of existence: work, brief forays onto the mountain when his battered knee allowed, and long nights alone with the puzzle of his wife and daughter's disappearance. The investigation had not officially advanced since the discovery of Ellie's ski boots 2 years earlier, but without new leads, the case lingered in limbo. Gabriel, however, refused to let the trail die. He kept in close contact with the small network of hikers, skiers, and off-duty patrol members who occasionally ventured into the deeper backcountry. One such group, a trio of experienced hikers known for mapping disused ridge, had made a habit of exploring the outer edges of Raven's Ridge during late spring thaws. In early May of that 7th year, Gabriel received an unexpected call from one of the hikers, a rugged man named Eric Vale. His voice was tight with urgency. "Gabriel, we found something. You need to come." The hikers had been charting a narrow ravine beneath the ridge, an area where winter slides often deposited layers of debris. Recent melt patterns had exposed a pocket of compressed snow and ice near the base of a collapsed tree. Half buried in the icy crust was a jagged fragment of a child's ski, pink and white, cracked clean through the middle. A smear of dark, dried matter marred its surface. Eric met Gabriel at the ranger station, his expression grim. "It was too old to be this season's gear. We marked the spot and brought the piece out carefully." Gabriel's hands trembled as he accepted the evidence bag. The fragment was unmistakably part of Ellie's skis, Gabriel remembered, choosing the set himself. But it was the faint, rusty stain along the fractured edge that turned his blood cold. "Think it's blood," Eric said quietly. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Has it been tested?" "Not yet. We wanted to notify you first. The Rangers are submitting it for DNA analysis." The wait for results was agonizing. Each passing day stretched into an eternity of spiraling thoughts. When the call finally came, Gabriel answered on the first ring. Detective Karen Holt, now the lead on the dormant case, delivered the news with careful precision. "We've confirmed the sample. The blood on the ski fragment belongs to Mira." Gabriel sank into his chair, the words echoing through the hollow spaces of his heart. The confirmation shattered any lingering illusions of accidental separation or benign misadventure. Blood meant injury or worse, and it meant Mira had indeed reached the lower runout of Raven's Ridge, near the very zone where the GoPro had been found. Detective Holt continued, "We're reopening the case formally. This constitutes new physical evidence. We'll need to revisit all prior witness statements and search records." Gabriel thanked her, voice hoarse with exhaustion. As he ended the call, a maelstream of emotion surged within him. Grief, rage, vindication, and above all, an unrelenting determination to see the truth brought fully into the light. That evening, Gabriel retrieved his worn case files and maps. He laid them out beneath the dim glow of his desk lamp, eyes tracing the familiar contours of the ridge, now indelibly stained by what had been found. The pattern was no longer a web of vague suspicions, it had become a chain of concrete links. The GoPro, the ski boots, the copied video footage, and now Mira's blood on Ellie's shattered ski. The unspoken question loomed larger than ever. How much had Victor known? How deep had his involvement run? Gabriel's gaze hardened as he turned to the final section of the map, the area that had remained most elusive, most dangerous. Somewhere beyond those uncharted slopes, the rest of the story waited to be unearthed. The reopening of the case sent ripples of unease through the small community that clung to the edges of Pinecrest Summit. The news of Mira's blood confirmed what many had suspected, but few dared speak aloud, that the mountain had kept dark secrets buried beneath its snow for too long. Gabriel felt the weight of the development with every fiber of his being. For 7 long years he had fought against the silence, the disbelief, the slow erosion of hope. Now the evidence was undeniable, and the hunt for the truth had begun in earnest. Detective Holt led the renewed investigation with methodical precision. Interviews were conducted, old records combed for inconsistencies, and search efforts intensified across the ridge and beyond. But it was a separate thread of inquiry, through interagency channels, that would soon yield the most shocking revelation of all. In early September, nearly 4 months after the ski fragment's discovery, Holt summoned Gabriel to the station with an air of subdued urgency. He arrived with a knot of dread coiling in his stomach, prepared for anything, almost anything. Holt met him in the briefing room, her expression grave. "We've located Victor Hale," she began. Gabriel's breath caught. "Where?" He moved to Utah 2 years ago, small town outside Salt Lake City. We would have flagged it sooner, but he used an alias for certain records, middle name, altered surname. However, property records and recent DMV filings connected the dots. Gabriel leaned forward, pulse racing. And? Holt hesitated, then continued. He's living with a 16-year-old girl registered as his adopted daughter, name listed as Elena Hale. The room seemed to tilt beneath Gabriel's feet. Elena, he whispered. Holt nodded. The adoption paperwork is legal, but suspect, filed through a private agency with minimal vetting. We've pulled photographs. She slid a file across the table. Gabrielle opened it with trembling hands. The image inside showed a teenage girl with long black hair, pale skin, and eyes that held a familiar depth. Though older and changed, the contours of her face, the subtle tilt of her gaze, there was no doubt. It was Ellie. His heart seized. 7 years had reshaped her, but the child he had cradled, taught to ski, sung to sleep, she was there, alive. Yet another truth crashed upon him like a wave. She had been living with Victor, believing herself his daughter. Holt's voice cut through the fog of emotion. We're coordinating with Utah authorities. We'll proceed carefully. There's no sign Victor is aware we're onto him yet. Gabriel gripped the table's edge, fighting the urge to bolt from the room, to board the next plane, to tear down whatever walls Victor had built between him and his daughter. Holt placed a steadying hand on his arm. I know this is difficult, but if we move too fast, we risk alerting him or causing trauma to Ellie. She may not remember, or may have been manipulated. Gabriel nodded, though the restraint required felt like a physical wound. The following days were a blur of strategy meetings and legal maneuvering. Utah's Child Welfare Services were looped in, and a multidisciplinary team prepared to approach the situation with the utmost care. Meanwhile, surveillance confirmed Victor's routine, work at a local ski outfitter, limited social interaction, and evenings spent at home with Elena. Photographs captured from a discreet distance showed her smiling faintly as they entered and exited the modest house. Gabriel pored over each image, heart aching with the distance imposed by years and lies. The plan, when it came, was swift and precise. Under pretense of a welfare check, social workers and law enforcement would gain entry, separating Victor from Ellie to ensure her safety and to assess her understanding of the situation. Gabriel was not permitted to accompany the team, not yet. Instead, he waited in a secure location nearby, every muscle taut with anticipation and dread. The operation unfolded on a crisp October morning. From a nondescript vehicle parked across the street, Gabriel watched as marked cars approached the house. Officers moved with calm efficiency, voices low and firm. Victor answered the door, feigning surprise. Elena was brought out moments later, bundled in a dark jacket, her black hair framing a face etched with wary confusion. Gabriel's breath caught as he glimpsed her through the car window. She was so changed, yet so unmistakably his. Within the hour, Victor was taken into custody on charges stemming from the reopened investigation. Ellie, placed under protective supervision, was transported to a nearby child services center. Gabriel's presence was not immediately revealed to her. The professionals advised caution. After years of potential grooming and psychological manipulation, a sudden reintroduction could do more harm than good. That evening, from a monitored observation room, Gabriel watched through one-way glass as Ellie sat across from a counselor. Her posture was guarded, her answers clipped. When asked about Victor, her voice softened. "He's my dad," she said firmly. "He's always taken care of me." The counselor nodded gently. "And before that, do you remember living somewhere else?" Ellie's brow furrowed. No, just with Dad." Gabriel's chest constricted. His daughter did not recognize him, did not remember the life that had been stolen from her. The truth lay buried beneath layers of falsehood and forgotten time. Holt placed a hand on his shoulder. "It will take time. She's alive. That's what matters. We'll help her remember." Gabriel nodded numbly. Eyes never left Keela beyond the glass. 7 years lost. A lifetime to reclaim. The interrogation room was a stark, airless box, lit by a single overhead lamp that cast harsh shadows on the pale walls. Victor sat across from Detective Holt, wrists cuffed to a steel ring bolted into the table. His face bore no trace of remorse. If anything, there was a simmering defiance in his eyes, a sickening blend of arrogance and certainty. Gabriel watched from behind the one-way glass, fists clenched at his sides, heart hammering. 7 years of rage and anguish burned beneath his ribs, barely contained. Holt began methodically reviewing the known facts: the discovery of Mira's blood, the GoPro, Ellie's boots, the ski footage Victor had copied, the false adoption. For a moment Victor said nothing, leaning back in his chair with maddening calm. Then he spoke, voice low and deliberate. "You don't understand," he said. "None of you do. Ellie chose me." Holt's expression remained impassive. "She was a child, Victor. You abducted her. You isolated her. You manipulated her." Victor's mouth curled into a faint smile. "And where was her father?" he asked, gaze flicking toward the glass as if sensing Gabriel's presence. "He abandoned her. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who protected her when no one else could." Holt leaned forward, voice steel-edged. "You murdered Mira Hossner. You stole Ellie's life. That isn't possession. It's possession." Victor's smile faded. A flicker of something darker passed through his eyes. "Mira was an accident," he said quietly. "She fell. I never meant—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Gabriel's breath caught. The admission, though partial, was damning. Holt pressed on. "And the surveillance footage, the videos you recorded of your students?" For the first time, Victor's composure faltered. His eyes narrowed, fingers twitching against the cold steel of the cuffs. Earlier that day, a forensic team had combed through Victor's home, seizing multiple hard drives and memory cards hidden behind false panels in his workshop. Among them, investigators had uncovered hundreds of hours of footage, most filmed without the subject's knowledge. The files painted a disturbing portrait of predation: close-up shots of young female students adjusting equipment, stepping into bindings, practicing balance drills under Victor's guidance. The grooming pattern was clear. Many videos were time-stamped during Victor's years at Pinecrest Summit, some even capturing the same girls repeatedly across seasons. Holt slid a stack of stills across the table. "No, Victor, we know everything." His shoulders tensed, knuckles whitening. For a long moment he stared at the images in silence. Then, voice thick with venom, he spat. "They adored me. I gave them confidence. I gave them purpose." Holt's voice was ice. "You gave them trauma," Victor sneered. "Ellie isn't like them. She knows the truth. She knows her father didn't want her." Gabriel's heart wrenched as the words cut through the glass. Holt remained composed. "You told her that lie for 7 years. You can't tell it anymore?" Victor laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You think you can erase what I built? She'll never go back to him. She chose me." Gabriel's nails bit into his palms. The depth of Victor's delusion was staggering, but worse was the knowledge that Ellie, his Ellie, had been trapped in that world of lies for so long. As the interrogation continued, Holt expertly dismantled Victor's defenses, each new revelation tightening the noose around him. Yet through it all, Victor clung to one grotesque refrain: that he alone had given Ellie the life she needed, that Gabrielle had failed her. Outside the room, Gabrielle stood frozen, mind reeling, with a maelstream of fury and despair. The hard drives were already being cataloged, their contents cross-referenced with missing person reports and prior complaints. The case against Victor was ironclad. But the greater battle, restoring Ellie's sense of self, of truth, had only just begun. The courthouse hallway was suffocating in its sterile brightness, its echoes filled with the soft scuff of shoes and the muted rustle of paper. Gabriel sat hunched on a cold bench outside the temporary juvenile services hearing room, heart hammering as he waited for word from Detective Holt and the court-appointed counselors. In the days following Victor's arrest, a careful, deliberate process had begun to untangle Ellie from the web of lies spun around her for 7 years. But unweaving such threads was neither swift nor simple. Legally, Ellie remained in protective custody. Emotionally, she remained tethered to the man who had stolen her life. The first breakthrough had come during a supervised session with a trauma counselor. Gabriel was permitted to observe through the one-way glass, a privileged both blessing and torment. He had watched, breath held, as Ellie sat across from the counselor, back straight, voice quiet but unwavering. "He told me," she had said, fingers twisting in her lap. "He told me my mother slipped, that she fell and broke her neck." Her voice caught. "And that my father didn't want me anymore. That he wanted to be free." The words cleaved through Gabriel like a blade. The horror of what Victor had done, not just the abduction, not just the grooming, but the poisoning of his daughter's memories, burned through him. Yet in that same moment, a desperate hope flickered. If Ellie could articulate the lies, perhaps one day she could reject them. Detective Holt later pulled him aside, voice low. "She's beginning to question parts of the story, but her loyalty to Victor runs deep. He conditioned her for years to believe only in him." Gabriel nodded, throat too tight for words. Now on this gray morning, Victor was being transported from federal holding to face area endangerment, child endangerment, sexual exploitation, among others. Ellie had requested, through her counselor, to see him one last time before the formal proceedings. Against all Gabriel's instincts, the team had allowed it under controlled conditions, believing the confrontation might catalyze further breakthroughs. Gabriel watched from behind the observation window, every muscle taut as the scene unfolded. Victor was led into the room in shackles, guarded by 2 officers. Ellie sat alone at the far end of the room, arms wrapped around his hands, dark hair falling in a curtain over her face. As Victor entered, she looked up, eyes wide with an emotion Gabriel could not decipher: grief, longing, confusion. "Papa," she whispered, not to Gabriel, but to Victor. His smile was slight, twisted. "I'm here, sweetheart." The guards remained alert, but Victor was permitted to sit a safe distance away. Ellie sprang up and crossed the room before anyone could react, flinging her arms around him with a choked sob. "I'm scared," she murmured. "They're lying to me." Victor's voice was soft, serpentine. "You know the truth, Elena, no matter what they say." Gabriel's nails bit into his palms as he watched, powerless to intervene. The counselor entered then, gently urging Ellie to return to her seat. Tears streaked her cheeks as she looked at Victor. "Is it true?" she asked brokenly. "Did my mother really fall? Did my father... Did he really not want me?" Victor's gaze flickered, but his voice remained smooth. "Of course it's true. I protected you." The lie hung heavy in the air. Ellie trembled, torn between the indoctrination of years and the fragile stirrings of doubt. The guards rose. The meeting was over. Victor was led to his feet, shackles clinking. Ellie clung to him, sobbing. "No, don't take him. Don't let them—" Gabriel surged towards the door, desperate to reach her, but Holt placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Not yet," she said softly. "It's too soon." Through the glass, Gabriel watched, with a heart shattering anew, as his daughter, his Ellie, wrapped herself tighter around the monster who had stolen her from him. The officers pried her gently away. Victor was escorted from the room, expression unreadable. Ellie collapsed onto the floor, weeping. Gabriel turned away, unable to bear it, tears blurring his vision. Outside the courthouse, the first flakes of winter snow began to fall. The long, bitter fight for his daughter's heart had only just begun. If this story kept you on edge, like it did for me, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What detail stood out the most to you? And do you think Ellie will ever truly heal from what she endured? Let me know in the comments below. Also, tell me where in the world you're watching this from. If you'd like more true mystery stories like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit like so you won't miss what we uncover next.